On today's show, part 3 of 3 with myself and Tyler Jones talking about all things Pascal Siakam, trade stuff, DeAndre Hunter, the center situation, the summer league situation for the Hawks, as well with the young guys, Kobe Bufkin, Mohamed Gay, and more. All of that is on the way.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1529 of Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Wednesday afternoon. This is actually going to be part 3 of 3 with myself and Tyler Jones. Not often I do a 3-part episode, but we got going long on this episode, and basically want to keep things tight episode to episode. So you get 3 parts all at once, talking about all things Hawks offseason with myself and Tyler. From the beginning, talking about the John Collins trade, to the Dejounte Murray extension, to the draft, to free agency, Pascal Siakam talk on this particular episode coming up right now, and then some summer league stuff at the very end of the episode. So please subscribe to the podcast anywhere you get your podcast. Make it your first listen each and every day. Also, tell a friend about the show. Really appreciate everybody spreading the word about the podcast. And without any further delay, here's part 3 with myself and Tyler. Let us talk before we get out of here about lingering trade rumblings. It's probably the way that I'll put that. I'm not even sure it's a rumor. It's. I had this debate with someone the other day about whether there's actually even been a Siakam rumor. I guess it kind of has been, but not quite that much. Anyway, I'm sure you probably heard, or maybe you heard me talk about that. Chris Haynes at last blush thought that it was more likely than not that Siakam stays in Toronto, which that's just on itself. And then I've been trying to remind Hawks fans of this. It's not just the Hawks that are trying to get Siakam. Like it's not just a Toronto or Atlanta. Like there are other teams that have tried to get him. So it's not even about necessarily him. I mean, it is about him on some level. I do want to know what you think of Siakam in general, because especially in conjunction, because I think you and I talked about this either offline or online at some point around Dejounte. And then in the middle of that, just kind of the whole discussion, they extended Dejounte, which I think was, I framed it as a kind of a no-brainer. Once Dejounte was willing to sign that deal, I think you kind of had to do that. But that took one of the options away, because one of the options was to trade Dejounte for Siakam. And then now they're not going to do that, obviously. So I'll just open it up to you. Like, what do you think of this whole thing, number one, from the Murray side, and also, like, now that Murray is locked in for at least 6 months or longer, of course, are you even interested? Because it seems, I made the joke today, but it seems like Hawks fans have almost, like, given up a little bit on Siakam in the last couple of days. I'm not sure when that happened. It's like, no, we never wanted that guy anyway. There's a little bit of that feel going on around Hawks fans right now.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the second Murray signed that extension, to me, that's when the Siakam trade just kind of become more fantasy land, where it's like, yeah, we'll trade him. We'll trade for Siakam if it's Capela and Hunter. Sure, why not? Like, those guys, we have replacements for them. But, like, are we going to add more stuff for an expiring contract? I wouldn't. And I don't think if they had, maybe the deal would be done. But, like, to me, with Dejounte Murray signing this extension, I'm not going to immediately cut into his value by trading for Siakam for what it would take to trade for Siakam, not what I would give up for the Hawks. What it would take to trade for Siakam. Why would I immediately sign Dejounte Murray to a good value extension to what some people are saying is one of the better contracts in the NBA, considering what he could have gotten on the open market, regardless of how you feel about Dejounte as a player? Like, you paying him less than $30 million a season. Do I want to immediately? Because, like, if I trade for Siakam, and this is what I was talking about with Glenn, with my PJ Washington point, where I was like, I mean, everybody can like Siakam as a player. He's a good basketball player. This is all known. Do I want him taking usage away? Do I want him cutting into Dejounte Murray's value as a basketball player on this Hawks team, where instead of it being a good value contract, it then goes into, like, even a bit underwater, depending on how the usage split goes, because Siakam's not going to take a backseat to Dejounte Murray, and he probably shouldn't. But, like, I don't know. Like, to me, I'm like, you got Dejounte Murray on this deal. I think Wes talked about it with you on the pod, where he's like, you got Dejounte Murray signing this good contract. Do we really want to invest in another guy who's not an elite three-point shooter, who needs the ball in his hands to get the maximum value? And like, would Siakam make Trae Young better? I don't think so. Like, to me, my biggest thing about any trade rumor, I'm like, is it Paul George or is it Kawhi Leonard? Because if it's not, what are we talking about? Like, for what it would take to get the guy, what are we talking about? Like, get a guaranteed top 15 guy, not somebody who's on the edges, who's on the periphery. Siakam's a good player. I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm just saying, like, he's better than Dejounte Murray. But is he 20 million more per season better? Does that make sense? Like, if you got Dejounte on this good value contract, how about you try to insulate those two with better fitting perimeter shooting players than going after Siakam? That's my big point. Now, if it's just Capela and Hunter, sure. It's not that those two guys, like, I'm low on Hunter, I'm probably lower than you on Capela,
which is fine. Yeah. No,
but if it's just for those two, then yeah, sure. But like, I'm not trading AJ. AJ's 19. I'm not trading Jalen Johnson. He's on a rookie scale contract. I'm not trading a first round pick just because they're going to need these picks because they're going to be this team. They're going to be approaching the tax every year that they have Trae Young on this contract. That's just the reality of the NBA. That's just how good teams operate.
Until they pay it, I have to assume they're not going to pay it. And maybe they will at some point. And I said this before, like, I won't close the door on them paying the tax eventually, and they say all the right things, but until they pay it, and they never have, you got to assume that that's a barrier for them. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it's hard to build a team without paying the tax that's a contender when you're paying your best player the max. Who, by the way, Trae Young earns the max. That's not a bad contract by any means. It's just that, like, I had somebody ask me actually today or yesterday about basically how Boston can afford to pay Jaylen Brown the contract that he just got with Tatum when the Hawks won't pay the tax. And I'm like, well, it's a different situation. Like, the Celtics are just
the Celtics are a 50+ win team every year,
right?
And they've had been for like the last 5 years.
And if you were trying to, and I don't generally take this tack, but if you were trying to defend Tony Ressler and his non-tax paying, the easy way to do that is to say the Hawks haven't been good enough, and that's a reasonable thing to say. I don't think I agree with that defense, but it is the best defense. The best defense of ownership not spending is that the Hawks have never proven to be that kind of team. I know they had the one run to conference finals, but even that year, they were the 5 seed. Like, they weren't supposed to be that. So anyway, on the Siakam point, I think you and I are pretty close on this. Like, I certainly have never been like, you have to go get Siakam. And I think that I'm not totally out either. And like, most people are either on one side or the other. That's just the way things work. But I'm with you. Like, I think you have to draw a line in the sand and say, this is what we're going to offer for Siakam and not get moved off that number or off that package. I would not trade AJ. I said on the show yesterday, he would not be in the deal for me. No chance. If you want to say that Jalen is the sweetener, I still wouldn't do that. I understand it more than AJ just because of the way that Siakam's talents kind of overlay things. But even then, I wouldn't do that. And I think, it's not that Siakam's old, because he's not. He's 29, but 29 is not young. And for me, with all the intel that's out there, both publicly and what I've heard offline in places like Vegas, or kind of basically an NBA convention, no one believes that he wants to be anywhere but Toronto. And I also heard specifically he doesn't really want to be in Atlanta. Now, I don't know how much that is like, Mark Stein said that out loud on a podcast. That's not like a secret, but
this is
risk on that. Like, you can't pay a lot. You can't. That's for me. I understand that most guys, not all, most guys take the most money wherever they can get. So if he gets traded to Atlanta and Atlanta's the biggest offer for him, he probably stays. But for me, you cannot make a trade on hope like that. Like, you have to make a trade for him if you're going to do it with the realization that you could be losing him in a year. And you have to give the package you trade for him has to match that possibility, in my opinion, which means I would probably go a little bit more than just Hunter and Capela, maybe one more throw in, whether it's the Kings pick or something like that. But I wouldn't go much beyond that because, look, this is not framed as being negative, but I want to know what you think about this too. I had someone ask me this offline. It was a good question. It's like, okay, let's assume that the deal is just, Hunter and Capela and one more throw in for Siakam. How good are the Hawks this coming season? And if the answer is not, legitimate contender to make the finals, you shouldn't do the trade. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Baseball season is in full swing. You can take your first swing at betting MLB at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're a new customer, get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right, just bet $20. You'll win $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. FanDuel has great promotions each and every day. You get paid instantly when you win. The app is also safe and secure. Plus, they have every kind of betting angle that you're looking for that you might possibly ever want at FanDuel. They cover the whole range of sports as well. That includes baseball and the NBA, WNBA, college basketball, college football, NFL, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, and much more. And different wagering options as well present at FanDuel, from live betting to futures, player props, point spreads, totals, money lines, etc. There's no better place to bet all the baseball and basketball action that you're looking for than America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up right now today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Get $200 in bonus bets right now at FanDuel. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and that's my take. I look at it, I'm like, for as good as Pascal Siakam is, because of the lack of shooting is so, like, I keep going back to how important shooting is, Brad. I recently looked at like the volume of 3-pointers the Hawks took. It's like Trae Young's the only guy who shot 400 threes in the entire season last year. And Tyler, Bogey was,
I mean, you remember I was screaming about this last summer to people getting mad at me, and I'm like, guys, they don't have enough shooting. I'm sorry, they don't have enough shooting. And we saw, number one, part of it was Nate. I will say that. It's not all Nate. You know, people want to say that it's all Nate. It wasn't. Some of it was, but they just didn't have enough shooting. Especially until Bogey came back, it was a wasteland, man. They didn't have enough shooting. Now they have more now. They have Bay. They have other guys that can shoot it, but I could still argue right now they don't have enough shooting.
That's why I go back to I'm like, I'd rather, like, PJ Washington's readily available. Like, I'd rather offer him the full mid-level and see if we can get the Hornets to match or not. Or maybe
I think they probably match it, but
he's a young basketball player who shot, like, at the power forward center position. He shot 8 threes per 100 possessions. That's what they need everybody in the starting lineup to do. Not who's not a center. Everybody. Hunter has got to shoot 8 threes per 100. Bay does it.
Oh yeah. No,
Hunter's the one, and Dejounte need to do it.
You said it earlier, but Hunter is the one where I know you're lower on him in general, but I've always said the last couple of years, like, his best pathway to being a better NBA player is to just take more threes and stop doing.
He can be good.
Everything else.
He can be good. He can be. I'm not, like, I get frustrated with Hunter because you see the Miami Heat playing game. I don't know why I keep coming back to that game, because that game was so weird. It was weird watching so many different guys. Like,
they bludgeoned them. That was crazy.
I felt like that was DeAndre Hunter. Like, that was one of the best games of DeAndre Hunter's career. And, like, he was in foul trouble. He only played 24 minutes, but, like, he was getting after it. He was getting after it, and grabbing rebounds.
Capela dominated the game. It was just
Capela, Okongwu, and this goes back to the Okongwu needs to play more. Like, Okongwu doesn't get much praise for it. Okongwu had like 12 points, 4 rebounds, 4 blocks in like less than 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was like 18 minutes.
He dominated in the 18 minutes that he played. But, like, you would not know that. Like, and that's where, if I'm Okongwu's agent, I'm like,
hold on.
Yeah. What's happening here? Like, I get Capela got almost a 20-20, but, like, come on. But this is my point with DeAndre. Like, you see the spurts. You saw it a bit with the Celtics after those rough first couple of games against the Celtics. Like, I feel like he settled in, and I wasn't so angry at him like I was to begin that series. But, like, he's a guy, like, to me, I'm like, he's got to want to be a 3-point shooter. Like,
well, and
he's got to embrace what John Collins did at the end of the season, where he's like, you know what, I know my role.
I'm just going to shoot.
I'm a pure 3-and-D forward.
I hesitate to even say this. This is against my normal disposition, which you'll appreciate when I say it. I think it was Grant Shirley, who's a great Hawks fan, Twitter follow, does a great job, like, finding everything. He's everywhere. It's great. Shouts to Grant. He shared some Instagram video of DeAndre Hunter, and it was all threes, and, like, he got excited about that, which I thought was funny. But it could be a little thing to just say, hey, maybe somebody. It's more that somebody in the organization, and I'm more serious about this part. I do think that it is likely, if not very likely, that some combination of Landry, Kyle, and Quinn said, hey, DeAndre, we need you to shoot threes, and we need you to work on shooting threes. And when you come back next year, you're going to shoot a lot of threes. And that I believe that probably happened on some level. So like the Instagram thing is more funny than anything else, but you know what I mean? Like, I think it's probably a good data point a little bit that he's like, somebody has just, with Nate, he was never going to be that guy. Nate was never going to be like, hey, DeAndre, I want you to stand 27 feet from the basket and fire away. I think that with this current regime headlined by Quinn, but it's, even Kyle and Landry, like they understand they want shooting. And if Hunter is here, again, he might be in a Siakam trade or whatever else. If he's here, he's got to shoot threes. And
look, if he changes his game where he's 3-pointers first, the rest of his skills will then be able to showcase themselves.
I agree.
Easier. Like he makes the game harder on himself by the way he plays, but he has to be willing to be a guy who's like, I'm here, I'm setting the screen, I'm popping out to the 3-point line. Even if I'm not open, I'm taking the 3-pointer.
Well, and he's not a great processor either. So like you have to kind of that's kind of what I mean. Like DeAndre has always been kind of robotic. That's been one of the knocks on him, even as a prospect, is that he kind of just thinks through. Like he's not a reactive player. He's not a supernatural mover. And I think that but I will say in his defense somewhat, I think Nate in particular was maybe the worst possible coach for DeAndre Hunter offensively. You know what I mean? Just because like it's every bad leaning that DeAndre has to kind of go in more mid-rangers. And look, here's the thing. He's a good mid-range shooter.
He's a good mid-range shooter.
He's good at it. The problem is he's not good enough at it to do that all the time. Like there are only 10 guys in the league that are good enough at that shot to do that all the time. And he ain't one of them. He's good at it, but he's not. Honestly, Dejounte is the level above DeAndre Hunter. And like Dejounte is actually good enough to do that. And even then, we still want him to shoot less mid-rangers, but he's a level above DeAndre at that. He's not Kevin Durant. He's not Chris Paul. Like these guys are Devin Booker. These guys are like unicorn level. So anyway, we talk about DeAndre Hunter.
No, but that's the overall point is that this team has to shoot more threes. And like if you're trading for Siakam, you're getting another guy who prefers to isolate at the top of the key, to survey the floor, to open 3-pointer. And it's like, okay, we're bogging down the offense again with another guy who's this type of processor, the way Hunter the way Dejounte Murray is. Like, and it's not me saying like Siakam's good. Like he's really good. He's an all-NBA caliber player. But like for this Hawks team, it to me, it would have to be either it's DeJounte or Pascal. And DeJounte answered that question for him by signing the contract extension. If he didn't, this would be a little bit more interesting of a conversation. But because he signed the extension, I'm like, okay, we got to move on. And I
generally agree. I think that there still is a point where I would consider doing it, as we talked about before, for the right price. But yeah, the issue is. And, it's not just having DeJounte and Pascal. It's having DeJounte, Pascal, and a center. And, like, there's been this note, and I'm guilty of this too. It is easier to do that if you're trading Capela. I'll agree with that. Like, but as much as people want to say Okongwu is maybe going to shoot it or whatever, at this point in time, this moment today, Okongwu is not a proven floor spacer.
Nope.
Like he's got more ball skills than Clint. He's more versatile than Clint, obviously, which is why I've said if you're going to do a Siakam trade, you got to trade Clint. Like you cannot go Murray, Siakam, Capela. That's not going to work. But even with Okongwu, who we agree is much more versatile and perimeter oriented, like that's still not enough. Like you still got Okongwu's probably not a non-shooter, but he's close to a non-shooter. Murray and Siakam on the floor together all the time. Like that's just you're putting a lot of pressure on Trey and whoever that fifth guy is, whether it's Bogey or Bay or whoever it's going to be, Griffin. Like that's a lot of pressure on that guy. And I think generally speaking, again, to bring it full circle to the question I asked you a minute ago, I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't think that you trade Hunter and Capela and a throw-in, whether it's a first-round pick or Bufkin or however you want to say that. Assume you do that trade. I don't believe that team is going to be a real threat to make the finals in year one. And if you don't think that, I have a hard time recommending that deal because, again, Siakam, by all indications, doesn't want to leave Toronto and doesn't want to really be here at this moment. And again, it could be smoke screens. I acknowledge that. But like, if there's a possibility, even if it's 30% chance that he leaves for nothing, you better be darn sure you're good this year, like real good in the first year. And I'm not quite on that plane.
Beyond all that, with Siakam in Atlanta, I'm like, what is Siakam going to look like in Atlanta as a scorer? Like, because here's the thing, Trae Young
less than Toronto
is running the offense.
Yeah,
Trae Young is the offense. Pascal's a great player. He might think he's better than Trae. That's cute. Right up until he gets to Atlanta,
yeah.
And Trae Young is diming everybody up, and it's like, oh, I got to take a secondary role to Trae. Then
you can maybe argue that Siakam is a better overall player than Trae. I wouldn't. You could maybe argue it, but you couldn't argue an offense. On offense, you can't argue an offense. Trey's a better offensive player than Pascal Siakam. It's not even close. I don't think. The only argument would be that Pascal happens to be 6'9" and can defend in a way that Trae obviously cannot.
I mean that's fair. That's fair, but they weren't saying.
No, I agree.
Pascal.
I'd rather have Trae too.
You know.
I'm just saying in general, Siakam in Toronto is a weird situation, which we don't have to go super deep into. But he's kind of been their unquestioned number one guy. Since Kawhi left, it's been Pascal's show, and he's been very good at that. But if you look at the numbers of their offense, it's not all him. It's not all his fault, by the way. They have other concerns like Barnes and the fit stuff and lack of shooting and all that. I think he'd be better. I think he would have been better with some more shooting around him. But we've seen the limitations of a Pascal Siakam as your best player offense. It ain't that good. It's a middling offense. He's really good, but he's better as a number two. The concern that you kind of brought up a minute ago about him and Dejounte is that I think, and I've said the same thing that you did, I think Trae and Siakam by themselves is a better fit than Trae, Murray, and Siakam together.
Yeah.
Because if you have Trae and Siakam, you can surround them with shooting, basically. Just have that be that's your plan. You have these two guys and shooters and maybe a center. It's just a little bit cleaner than it would have been that it will be if that happens with Trae, Dejounte, and Siakam, because somebody out of those three guys has to have 20% usage. You know what I mean? Like, you can't have three guys with super duper high usage. It doesn't really work. Like, I guess it can. I guess Phoenix might test this theory this year.
No, but I mean, but look at the Hawks have other guys that got to eat.
Well, that's the thing. You have other guys that need the ball. Yeah, Bogey's the guy who needs the ball some.
Okongwu's got to get the ball some. I mean,
you're trying to develop AJ Griffin. You're trying to develop Jalen Johnson, and like those guys. Eventually, the best version of AJ Griffin is more than a spot shooter. The best version of Jalen Johnson needs to have the ball. Not all the time, but he's not going to ever be this guy who doesn't have the ball. Like, he needs to have, that's part of his appeal on offense. So, yeah, I think you and I are pretty closely aligned here in that I wouldn't close the door on a Siakam trade, but I would not be as eager to do it as a lot of people would be at this point. Because, and look, I was more middled on the Murray for Siakam possibilities too, because Toronto wanted more than Murray. It was going to be Murray plus. It wasn't like it was just going to be Murray for Siakam. And now that Murray's off the table, it's like, all right, yeah, we know the structure. The structure is what you just said. It basically has to be Hunter, Capela to a third team, and maybe one more thing. And like, that's fine. But like I talked about on yesterday's show, Eric Corrine, who I'm not ripping, he covers the Raptors. The package that he put out there was like AJ and 2 picks. And I'm like, if they do that, like, I'm going to go nuts. Like, and I don't really go nuts anymore, but I'd be like, that would be a terrible idea.
Listen, to me, the Dejounte Murray trade now doesn't look so bad. Like, it's not. I would even argue, considering the contract that Dejounte signed, it's a good trade. Like, just flat out, just based on the value of the player. That's
a great point.
On what you could potentially get, what Dejounte could now get on the market. They're not going to trade him on this contract, by the way, just because.
One of the downsides, back you up, one of the downsides of the Dejounte trade in the first place was that he could leave for nothing, and it was a very realistic possibility that he could leave for nothing. Now that we know that he's not going to leave for nothing,
not only not leaving for nothing, he's on a good contract, like flat out.
Yeah,
like, it's just a good contract for the type of player that he is.
That's
good value. So now it's like, okay, that's a good trade, but you're still out picks. We don't need to be out more picks for a basketball player who, again, is not Kawhi Leonard or Paul George. For whatever people think about those two guys, when they're on the floor, they are like Kawhi Leonard is one of the best players in the NBA when he's healthy. Paul George is a top 10 player still, even at their age.
Do you have the Paul George Twitter alert set for if Paul George ever asks for a trade or something? You have the alert set?
Man, listen, I've been Hawks fans understand. I've wanted Paul George on the Hawks since they offered 4 unprotected first-round picks to the Pacers all those years ago for the 5 All-Star team. That they just needed a star, and Paul George was available, and Indiana was like, no, thank you. But like, he's still so good, Brad. Like he's still so good. Like people make all these jokes that he's always hurt, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, and like I think Glenn made a post with like, Paul George only played X amount of games. Like DeAndre Hunter's played, more games than Paul George recently. Like you gotta, build for the future. I'm like, man, come on.
No,
now. This Paul George though.
The argument against Paul George is he's 33 years old. That's the argument against Paul. I mean, obviously the durability too, but the only reason why, like I saw this a while ago now, but I saw on Twitter you were talking with somebody about Siakam versus Paul George. I think you were. Pretty sure you were. And it was this conversation, and it was like, and I said, Paul George is better. And then that was, I guess, controversial. The arguments against Paul George are the durability and the age. But like, as far as like right now today, like Paul George is perfect.
But the thing is, like, Paul George is perfect on the Hawks, where Siakam, we have fit concerns. You put Paul George on this team, regardless of who you have to trade out. Now we're talking title contender with next to Trae Young. I mean, that's just. But so it's like, you're either trading for that type of player or you're building with the young guys that you have on the roster. Like, I'm optimistic about what these guys can do. Like, it's like, to me, AJ Griffin and Jalen Johnson, what they showed last year, showed positive trends in like different, like, and those are 2 guys who could potentially have the ball in their hands. And so, like, I would like to build with those guys and Kobe Bufkin and et cetera, to see what we can have in the future. Like, but because like, to me, you trade for Siakam, you're probably the same caliber team than what you are right now. You might have a higher floor, but I mean, I don't know. Like, to me, I'm like, let's be patient. Like this Hawks franchise has shown some patience. Recently, since the trade deadline, they've made some adult decisions. I know we're running out of time. We're not going to talk about the draft. I thought it was a very adult move to draft Kobe Bufkin over Cam Whitmore, considering the needs on the team, because like Cam would just have no path to playing time.
Well,
and
I would love to know, and I've been trying to do this, and that's why somebody asked me this the other day. I almost answered on some mailbag question. People keep asking me like, was Whitmore on the Hawks board, basically, and I don't know the answer, because he fell as far as he did, and I can tell you from around the league, he was off a lot of teams' boards entirely. I don't know if he was off the Hawks board, but obviously he was not as high as Kobe Bufkin on the Hawks board. So it's just interesting because, especially after Summer League, you can imagine my mentions are like, why did they draft Cam Whitmore? Look at this guy Bufkin. Like, Whitmore's the Summer League. I get it. Like, and look, I have.
Am I the only one who thought Kobe Bufkin was good in Summer League? Like, I don't.
You and I are closer than I was maddened by some of the reactions to Kobe Bufkin. I think that people acting like he was terrible in Summer League didn't really watch and just looked at the numbers, and that's fine. Like, he wasn't great or anything, but like,
I mean,
I said on the last show after that, I think it was with Wes, I was like, my opinion's the same as it was before Summer League, and people, I think most people like are now lower on him, and I don't really get why. Like, he did some things that you want. He was playing point guard, which he's never really done before. He won them a game single-handedly at the end of a game, made 4 straight awesome plays in crunch time. Like, he did some stuff. I don't know. I wasn't worried about that at all.
It's not as if he got to play alongside, like, I mean, he played with AJ for like 10 minutes. It felt like.
It also wasn't a sexy pick. To your point about the adult thing, like, it wasn't a sexy pick in that you kind of have to explain. I mean, I've had to explain it to Hawks fans. Like, you have to explain that, like, it's not a pick for now. And people think like combo guard is this like bad thing. Like, and the pick is kind of about his versatility and the fact that he's like, they believe he's going to be a winning player in 2 or 3 years. Like, it's not as easy to say, like, he's a small forward, he's a point guard, he's a shooter. Like, his pitch is more nuanced, you know what I mean, than a lot of prospects are. Like, if you draft Grady Dick, let's say, who's not available, but you know what I mean? It's like, this guy's going to be an awesome shooter. That's an easy sell to any fan. Cam Whitmore is a physical freak athletically. That's an easy sell. Power wing, basically. Bufkin's like, okay, this guy is a little skinny. He plays both guard positions. He's not elite in anything. It's like it's not a sexy pitch. But that's kind of what you're saying, I think, is like, it's kind of like they like the guy.
He's adult, and like they don't have ball hand. Like they really don't have many ball handlers. Like
they have two.
It's Trey, Dejounte, and maybe Jalen if they allow him to touch the ball.
And a little bit of Bogey, a little.
And Bogey,
yeah, that's it.
But what Kobe was doing, like they don't really have that outside of those guys. And then on top of that, like I thought his perimeter defense was really good. Like I was really impressed with how he defends.
The first game, he was mad at himself. He talked to the media about this. Like he got blown off the ball a lot. Like his physicality wasn't quite there the first game, and he came back, and the rest of the week it was pretty good. And he talked to the staff about it, and he was like, they all kind of knew he was like a little bit not quite there. And then in the rest of the week, he was defending hard.
Look, man, it's really impressive to be that skinny and that young, and to constantly get back up and continue to fight and continue to play hard and continue to make winning plays on the defensive end when you're at a physical disadvantage. It's easier. It's easier to be the big man in the room. Like it just is. But like that showed a level of tenacity that they need out of a perimeter player. Like they don't have that currently on this roster. So I liked all the stuff he did. Like I'm hopeful for him, but like he's not. Is he ready to contribute to the Hawks team right now? No, he's not. He's got some things to work on. I think the biggest thing he needs to work on, honestly, is his shooting more than anything else. Like catch and shooting. Catch and shooting in the NBA is just different than what it is in college. Like, so like that's just going to take time. But like I'm confident that he's going to be able to get there.
Are you Mo Gay pilled like most Hawks fans? Have you decided that he's going to be a 7-time All-Star?
You know, if only he had. You know, it's funny because I did see some stuff about Mo, and I liked him. I like the tools that he had. But I
like it too.
I kept watching. I'm like, if he had John Collins's tenacity, he'd have been top 10. You know,
yeah, I mean,
it's it's one of those things where it's like I get he's a skinnier guy, but like the second he embraces, like not just accepts physicality and contact, but like seeks it out and embraces it and plays with a level of intensity that somebody of his athleticism needs to play with in the NBA. Like we kind of saw it with Jalen. Like Jalen could not get on the floor until he really got it, what he had to do physically on the defensive end as an elite athlete. Like that's to me, that's where Mo has to really make an imprint. And like he's skinny, but it's more than just being skinny. Unlike Kobe, I just felt like too often he shied away from contact in ways on both ends. And I'm like, you got to get after it because you'll get calls. Like, you have the type of physical profile that will get you calls as long as you play with that level of physicality. But like that's tough to tell a 20-year-old who's clearly undersized. Hey, like it's not like you're not playing hard, but there are levels to this, and I'm going to show you tape. And also his hands, like his hands aren't that good. Like also, like to me,
no. And I mean, the thing is,
he struggles in space, or not in space, in like contested areas to catch the ball. Yeah.
He's the kind of prospect. And again, this is not a negative because I like him too. But he's the kind of guy that if you just watch the highlights, you think he's going to be the greatest player of all time. Yeah. And if you just dig in, I mean, same thing as the film. Like if you watch him Washington State, which I know most people don't need to do, and I'm not saying anybody has to. Like the impact just wasn't there. Play in, play out, and he the flashes are great, and he rebounds really well. Like you can see, like to your point, when he loads up and goes after an offensive rebound, he's getting it. Like he's so long, he's bursty, and when he wants to go get the ball, he goes and gets it. But like he coasts a lot, and he's not a center, which I'm glad the Hawks know that he's not a center, and they talked about it all week long. And also, this is a sneaky thing. He doesn't want to be a center, and that's not always a bad thing. But like, I think he thinks he's Kevin Durant. And like, and he's not, which is fine. It's fine.
I mean, that's fine. You can want to be Kevin Durant, but it's tough to tell these guys this, but it's like,
well, and that's the thing. Just the intel, like even in college. So I asked around about Washington State, and it's like, no, I think people, and it's good because he has the skills to play on the perimeter. And again, he's not a center. He's not ready to play center, especially defensively. We saw you. I know you saw because you watched every game. The stint he played at center defensively was a disaster. Like they couldn't stop a soul. It was a layup line, and I'm almost glad it was that obvious if you watched it. Not because I'm trying to be negative on the kid, but just to say, hey, Hawks fans, if you want to watch why he's not a center, here it is. Watch this. It wasn't just him either, but you know what I mean. I was like,
but the thing is, if he's going to play power forward defensively, he's got to be flying around. Like he's got to be all over the floor. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like that's why I'm saying like they got to show him tapes of Jalen Johnson's progression as a player. Where it's like this is what Jalen Johnson was doing.
He'll go to College Park and
consistent playing time, and this is what Jalen Johnson was doing after Quinn took over and gave him a consistent role on the perimeter, and he's just flying around on defense, causing havoc. Like that's where, to me, like Mo's got to make his money as an energy guy. Like you can want to be Kevin Durant, and I understand everybody wants to be Kevin Durant. He's a cool guy. It's only one Kevin Durant, man. Only one of them. Giannis not Kevin Durant.
No.
You know, Giannis not KD. And Giannis wants to be KD, but he can't. He doesn't have the touch. And to me, I'm like, Mo, like, I think there's some pockets where he can get better, but I just don't think he'll ever be that level of player. But I don't want to cap his ceiling just because he's got, like, to me, he's got every tool in the toolbox. Now it's more about, can you turn those tools into production? Can you get me a consistent 2 blocks a game in the G League? Can you consistently grab rebounds? Can you consistently get steals? Can you consistently, if you grab a rebound, push the ball up the floor and make a play for yourself? Like he did some interesting stuff, on both ends all summer league, but like he's got a ways to go to me. Like he's got to, and like to me, the biggest thing he has to do is lock in mentally on what he needs to do in order if he wants to see the floor.
Yeah, he'll get there. I'm not it's a developmental guy, and they know that. But we have gone long, as you said, but that was predictable. We always do. Anything you want to get out there? And it's anime time. If you have anything you would like to share at the end of the podcast.
Oh man, I have not. Oh man, I haven't. I'm behind on a lot of stuff. I am currently reading a bunch of Korean webcomics that are called manhwas. I can't recommend any of them because I don't remember the name. Brad, it's been a hectic couple of weeks, to be fair to me. If you want to know more, just follow me on Twitter and like you'll see what's happened. But like I've kind of just been reading just a lot of random stuff, a couple like stuff on webtoons or whatever, just to get me through my days, because it's been a rough couple of weeks, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah,
but on the anime front, Bleach, the next batch of episodes of Bleach is coming out on Hulu, so check that out. If you like anime, you gotta watch Bleach, man. But other than that, I'll recommend some more stuff. I think there's some good stuff on Netflix coming out. Crunchyroll's got some good stuff. High Dive, Helk on High Dive is probably another recommendation I can give. I've read the manga; it's pretty good, but I haven't seen the anime yet. But I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna get after it. You ain't gotta worry about me, folks, about my anime. I'm gonna get after it. But it's been a rough couple of weeks. So I ain't got. Oh, one recommendation I do have: go to Dream Games, Atlanta Dream. They're good. I think they're the 5th seed now. Currently, they're battling with the Wings for the 4th seed for home court in the playoffs, and they got a chance to do that. Ryan Howard is incredible. Alicia Gray, she's like the perfect complement to what Ryan does. Like those two, they're gonna have a long future in Atlanta. And like, if you're a basketball fan and you want to watch some good basketball, watch the Dream. Go to Dream Games. Watch them on Bally and on Ion on Fridays, I think. But like I've thoroughly like I'm fully Dream build.
You're in. I know.
Me, Renee Montgomery got me, so I'm all in, and I can't wait for the next. I think they play Liberty on Thursday on Amazon Prime, so check that out.
There you go.
and
I wish I had
lady.
more time. I wish I had more like bandwidth and time to cover the dream, like really cover the dream. Because I never want to be one of those people that just like covers a team and doesn't actually know what's going on. I kind of I have to be all in, or I'm not going to be in, and I know I don't have time, but I've been watching. They've been fun. So
yeah, Ryan got me into the dream just because she's such a different, like, her level of shot making is just not something I've seen from many women basketball players. Like, it's just different in ways that it's hard to describe unless you see her play. Like, she kind of plays. She kind of plays like Jason Tatum a bit. Maybe is probably the best male comparison, but she doesn't really. Not really. It's different. She's a very unique basketball player, and that's why I've really like bought into the dream these last couple of years since they gotten her. So, and they finally turned the corner, and they're a good team now. They're not the Aces, unfortunately. Who they have, like, I told my dad, they got like 4 of the best 8 women basketball players in the world on one team, and I don't know how they.
It's pretty good. They don't lose. I know that much. They don't lose.
It's unfortunate. Right? The dream are good. The dream are good though. So
the dream are good.
That's nice.
That's a good recommendation. All right, Tyler. Thank you for giving me all this time as always. This might even be 3 episodes by the end of this. Might be 3. Might be a new record for us. We'll see.
My bad.
I have to do some surgery. No, we're good. It's fine. It's off season. It's late July. We'll do this again at some point in the dead zone of August, September, I'm sure. If they make a big transaction, of course, we'll have to talk about it. But even if not, we'll do some preview content later on. Thank you again for doing this. Please follow Tyler if he allows you to at Jonesy2x4. He is protected, so he has to say yes.
Not my fault.
You can try. You can try. It's fine.
Did you say on Twitter?
I guess what's it called now? X? Is it X now?
I don't know what it's called, man.
They're gonna change my Locked On. If you're watching this on YouTube, the Locked On graphics are made for me. I don't make these, and it still has the Twitter little Twitter logo.
It's got the bird. Yeah,
it's gotta be an X at some point soon. So anyway, thank you, sir. I appreciate all of this as always. As for everybody else, please subscribe to this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. We'll see you all next time.